speed.
Camera 2
Two
is speeding.
Okay, hold on. Be careful.
There.
Sollie Mitchell, interviewed by David Jameson,
All right, that's rolling.
July 3rd, 2019 in Jacksonville.
Alrighty.
Just keep an eye on my
Your camera?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Sit down right here.
Alrighty. So I know this guy will go keep going.
I'm actually going to bring this chair over here so I can keep an eye on it.
Okay. Alrighty.
Alright, I get a clap for audio.
Alright.
Okay.
Whenever you're ready.
Could you tell me your name, please?
Sollie Mitchell.
When and where were you born?
I was born in Oscilla, Georgia, 1918, June the 20th.
And what has been your primary occupation for most of your working life?
Railroad.
Are you a member of any social or fraternal organizations?
Yes, I belong to Alpha Phi Alpha fraternity. Others. I belong to Alpha Phi Alpha fraternity. I belong to Northside Business Leaders. I belong to the Masonic family, all phases of the Masonic family, Scottish Rite, York Rite, and Egyptian rites. I belong to all of them, and is the second highest active member in the Scottish Rite. And I've received honorary degrees in all the rest of the phases of Masonry.
Could you share with us the story of how your family, of how you moved to Jacksonville because of events in your family?
Well, I moved to Jacksonville after the death of my grandfather. My mother and father lived in Chicago, and my mother developed TB in Chicago. So when they went to Chicago, I guess I was about 6 or 7, they asked me, "Do you want to go?" I told them no, I wanted to stay with my grandfather. So they gave me my privilege to stay with my grandfather. So I stayed with him and my step-grandmother until he passed. And he passed, I was 13. Before my mother passed, she had TB. Before she passed, she told the family that she wanted her boy to be given to her baby brother, who was named Leroy Mitchell. I didn't stay with my father. She wanted her baby brother to have me. My daddy was one of those type of fellas who had a temper, and with his temper he wasn't able to get along with other people. So therefore she knew that, and she wanted her brother to have me upon her death. So that's what happened.
How did your family leave Oscilla and go to Chicago? Why did they move to Chicago?
My father went to Chicago because of an incident in Waycross. He didn't want to take orders. Therefore, this fellow who white fella who told him to do something. Got into an argument, and the argument developed, and they in a fault, so my father had to leave Waycross and get out of town to keep from being lynched. And my father and mother went to Chicago.
Why would he have been lynched for just getting in a fight?
Black fellas back in those days didn't have fights with white folks. You either got beat by them or got lynched. They didn't agree with you fighting them back, and my daddy didn't take that. He fought back and won, and then had to go. He moved north so that he would not be lynched.
Why do you think your mother chose for you to live with her brother rather than with your father?
Knowing her husband with his temper and his lifestyle, she wanted her baby brother to have me upon her death. And that's what happened. But my father was still dutiful to me. He kept me in clothes, kept in touch with me, but I didn't live with him. I lived with my grandfather from the time of when my mother passed. I think I was about 8 years old. And I lived with my grandfather until he passed. And when he passed, I was 13 years old, 3rd grade.
Do you remember how you felt not living with your father when you first learned that you were going to live with your brother? Do you remember how you felt at that moment?
I didn't even think about it. I did what I was told. And that was it.
And what do you think about that decision today that your mother made?
I think that was, I am very grateful to her for making that decision. And I'm glad that I decided to make a decision to ask them to let me stay with my granddaddy rather than go to Chicago. The weather and TB epidemic was pretty bad.
You say that your father was involved in an incident with a white man.
Oh yes.
What lessons do you take from how your father interacted with white racism?
Well, my father was one of those type of persons, I believe, that he made his own decision, and if they didn't agree with him, there it was. And that stood with me all of my life, by me knowing that I wanted to live differently than my father. Although my father, I loved him very much, he took good care of me, but I wasn't living with him. After he left Chicago, he went to Boca Raton, Florida, and he stayed in Boca Raton, and he married a lady, and they moved to Bradenton, Florida. So that's where my father lived until his death. And he passed in 43, I believe. I was in the service when he passed. He married a very nice lady. She was very fond of me. And I began to take care of my father after being in the service. I was in the service when he passed. I took care of my dad and his wife, Miss Lena, who was very good to me.
In regard to your father's actions and his decisions, what do you consider as a black man in America and as a family man, if you have a choice between defending your honor, defending what you think is your respect, versus saying, I have a family, I can't get involved? What do you feel is the sort of the best choice?
Well, that is a real question. Because, repeat that again?
So, your father, when he got into his fight, he was defending himself.
Right.
But if he would have just taken a beating, he would have gotten to go back to his family.
Right.
So, given those choices as a family man versus defending your honor or just going back to your family, what do you think about his decision?
Well, it's just like today. Today, I compare it with today because this young generation have their, endings, and I believe that my father did the same thing. He was a great man in my sight, but I had just received the word from my mama and my grandfather about him, and he was very dutiful to my mama, and he was dutiful after my mama passed, he remarried, and he was dutiful to Miss Lena. And that's one thing that I kind of admired him for. So when I became married, I tried to do the same thing. I had beautiful, charming wife. I thought she was the prettiest of all. And I like that. I took that trait after my dad died. Took care of my loved one.
What year did you move to Jacksonville?
1931.
How did you, what was life like living with your aunt and uncle?
Well, let me tell you about that. When I first came in 31, okay, my uncles, I had two uncles. They lived in a shotgun house. Each one had a child. My baby uncle had a girl and the older one had a son. So they lived in a shotgun house. And therefore, I stayed with Mose William a while. And that's what I did. I stayed with Uncle Mose till Mozella was born. And then what happened, my aunt would take me to work with her every day during the summer days. And during the summertime, she didn't let me shoot marbles. She didn't let me caddy. She didn't let me do anything that the other boys like me were doing. She didn't let me shoot marbles. She would take me to work with her. And when I went where she worked, I would clean up the house, clean the car, and keep the yard up. I'd do anything that the white family needed to be done while I was there. And I'd come home with my aunt at night. But what happened, my aunt became ill, and when she had a cold. So she asked Miss Sims, she told Miss Sims that, she was sick. So Miss Sims asked her, you go home, stay until you get well, and come back.
Miss Sims was her employer.
Yeah, that was the Caucasian family that she worked for. So she did. My aunt gave me to the white family. I moved in the white family's home at 13. I slept on one side of the room and her son slept on the other. She told all of the big, rich white women in Riverside, I got 3 boys, 2 white ones and 1 black one. And she treated me that way. She attended PTA. I'd go to church with them on Sunday. Riverside Methodist Church, I sat right on the front seat with her and Mr. Sims. That's where I stayed. Well, while at Stanton, I took up cooking. I took up printing. I took up tailoring. So I took more interest in cooking than I did tailoring and print. So there was a representative from Tuskegee came to Jacksonville. He came out Riverside, and Mr. Sims let him interview me. So he gave me a full scholarship at Tuskegee. But the catch was, when I finished Stanton, male students at Tuskegee had to wear a uniform. The price of that uniform was $100. I didn't have $100. So that's why I didn't go to Tuskegee. So, but I had a good friend who was a student at Tuskegee, and Judge Thompson of Orlando, his son, he said, Sollie, why don't you go to Florida Normal? That's a Baptist school. And I was a member of Second Baptist Church on Kings Road there. He said, that's a Baptist school, and if you go over there, I believe that you can get in. I didn't have 39 cents to go over there. So what happened, Miss Sam was only giving me $1 a week. That's what I was getting a week. So, but she had bought me a bicycle coming from Riverside to Stanton so I could go backwards and forth to school. I would take my classes, and then after school I'd ride back to Riverside and do my work around the Sim Zone.
What was life like going from your aunt's house, a shotgun shack, to living with the Sims? Was there anything that you missed, or were you happy to get out?
Well, Miss Sim, there was no difference in my treatments than her sons, because I had it good. Had a car, you know. If I didn't use his car, I used hers to come backwards and forth over in the black community. So I finished Stanton in 1940. My class, the junior class gave the senior class the prom. We did everything that the teachers and all do in schools at that time. The senior class. So therefore, the senior year, I was president of my class. So there I had the position of the principal. So that happened while I was there. Now, I was much older than the rest of the students in my class. See, I was 13 in third grade and repeated that while I was at La Villa. I went to La Villa in third grade in 1931 and repeated it 1 year. I teased my teacher as long as she lived. I said, when I first came here, you gave me 20 D's. When I left there, I was president of the class, A student. But coming from Georgia, brother, I was bashful, as you can say then, timid. I wasn't used to being in a crowd. I was reared by my grandfather, so therefore I didn't have any classmates. I didn't have no sisters or brothers. So therefore I was around adults, which was my grandfather and my step-grandmother. And my step-grandmother had a son and a daughter, but they didn't stay there in the shack that we stayed in the cabin, no windows, or anything like that.
So why do you feel, or why do you think your aunt thought it would be a good idea for you to live with Miss Sims?
Well, she didn't say anything. I had two aunts. My aunt who was working for Miss Sim thought it was a good thing, but the other aunt thought it wasn't the right thing. But Miss Sim was like a mother. She was a good woman.
How important has education been to you, and where do you think you got that from?
Well, I don't know. I've always wanted to learn. Man, I wanted to learn everything. I took up tailoring, I took up typing, I took up cooking. I just wanted to No. And I was very fond of being educated. I was a member of Second Baptist Church on Kangaroo, and my pastor was very good to me because he looked identical like my granddad. They looked like they could have been brothers. So therefore I had a love for my pastor, K.D. Britt, because of that.
Do you believe that that was a factor in you wanting to learn something, or you wanting to learn so much about different topics?
Yeah, I don't know. I didn't want to teach, but I did want to learn everything that I could. I took up tailoring, took up typing, cooking, but cooking was the main thing. So that's how. Okay, now by me being an older student, you know, I told you I had ridden a bicycle to Florida and all. Well, I was about the oldest male student at Florida and all. So in 1940, when boys that was 18 or older had to register with the selective service, I had to register because I was in my 20s, I think about 21 and 22. So therefore I had to register for the Army. So in 1941, I registered in 40. In 41, I was the first student, male student, drafted to the Army from Florida North. I was drafted, came to Jacksonville, sent from Camp Blandon. I was processed. I was inducted at Camp Blandon. I stayed there and was inducted. 3 of us, Joe Jackson, Albert Hill, and myself. We were drafted. Then they sent us to Fort Benning. So when we got to Fort Benning, I was processed. And while being processed there, they were going to send me to Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri, as a cook. But what happened, a friend of mine who I had grew up with was working for the commander at Fort Benning, the general. So he was working in his office. So he looked out the window and saw me in line getting ready to go to Fort Leonard Wood. He told the general, he said, there's a soldier out there can type. They needed typists. They needed clerks at Fort Benning, soldiers. Bring him in. So they took me out of line, brought me in. And I started working in the office. I was a fire clerk and did a little typing, but I was a fire clerk. But what happened to me there is that I became friendly with the commanding officer, who was Colonel James. So, being reared by white people, I asked him, I said, Colonel James, where are you from? He said, I'm from Birmingham, Alabama. I'm the president of Birmingham Trust. I say, you are? I say, my mama's brother is your head teller. I said, I was reared by a white lady. I said, her brother is your head teller. His name John. He said, that's right, that's right. So what happened then, I would, on weekends, I would go out to his house, clean up, do anything that the John wanted. While there, I learned how to ride a motorcycle, the Army 3-wheel motorcycle. I became his valet. I would take him to inspect troops. I would drive his car, and then I would drive the car that the government gave him, and also the motorcycle. So I was on Easy Street there. I didn't make no reveille. And when his wife, he lived in Birmingham. When his wife wanted to go to Birmingham, his personal car was a Cadillac. I'd go get in that Cadillac, drive her to Birmingham, stay there over the weekend as long as I wanted, and come back. And that was my token to him. I'd go take her to Birmingham. Then I would stay in Birmingham overnight, or come back to Fort Benning and stay overnight before I went back to the base.
Once you were discharged, how did you start working for the Pullman Car Company?
Huh?
The Pullman Car Company, the railroad porter company that you worked with?
Well, tell you what happened there. When I was discharged, I went to the Pullman Company and asked for a job. They gave me a job as a Pullman porter. And there I worked until the Pullman Company had to downsize. So when they downsized, I said, well, I like the railroad. I went to the Seaboard Railroad. I asked for a job. They said, right now we are not hiring, but we'll be hiring in December. Went right round the corner, the Atlantic Coastline had an office. I asked them for the job and they hired me right then. So therefore, I was with them the rest. But I remained with the Sleeping Car Porters organization. I was Secretary of Treasury of the Pullman cars here in Jacksonville.
Did you have any experiences with the Brotherhood of Sleeping Car Porters that were impactful for you, that were very memorable?
Well, I enjoyed the Pullman Company because I was meeting all of these people, kings, dukes, and all. I enjoyed that very much. But that didn't last long because we were hauling soldiers all over the country. We were hauling. So when they started to downsize, then I got a permanent job with the Atlantic Coastline.
Did you have any interaction with A. Philip Randolph?
Philip Randolph, and I was just like this because I was the secretary for the Brotherhood of Sleeping Car Porters. And A. Philip Randolph and my mother-in-law were classmates at Cookman here in Jacksonville. He was valedictorian of the class, and my mother-in-law was a member of the class. A. Philip Randolph father and my mother-in-law father were good friends. My mother-in-law and A. Philip Randolph's daddy was preachers. My mother-in-law's father was presiding elder, and A. Philip Randolph father came to Jacksonville. You know, when they were in Jacksonville, he was a minister, and he became pastor of New Hope AME Church on Davis Street. So they were very good friends. And my mother-in-law and A. Philip Randolph were just like that. They were good friends.
Going back to your earlier days in Jacksonville,
Huh?
could you talk about your relationship with the Pearson family and the members of the Pearson family?
The Pearson, Rutledge Pearson father and Lloyd Pearson father was one of my mentors. I wanted to be, he could ride a bicycle. So that's where I developed my bicycle riding skill from Lloyd Pearson's father. He didn't live too far from me. He lived Connie Street, I think, and I lived on 5th Street. So I admired his father. And the entire family. Lloyd Pearson, Rutledge Pearson, and his other brother. I can't call his name now. And his sister, Dolores. We all were good friends during our upcoming days. But Lloyd and I stayed close together. I took Grace Marine to the junior-senior prom, and he took Lenora Lee's mother to the junior-senior prom. And we used Miss Sims' car, because when I told her I wanted to go to the prom, Mr. Sims said, give him 10 cents. Well, at that time, the taxi fare in Jacksonville was 10 cents. She said, no, take my car. And she had a brand new Ford. So that's who I took to. Lloyd and I, he took Lenora Lee's mama, and I took Grace Marine, my next door neighbor, to the junior-senior prom. That was in 1939. I was president of the class, so therefore we had to give the senior class the prom. So that's how we came out there.
On your recent birthday, the city of Jacksonville showed you a lot of appreciation.
Oh Lord!
If you could tell the rest of the country something about Jacksonville that most people don't know, what would you have to say about Jacksonville?
I can say for the last 2 years, the city of Jacksonville has been outstanding to me. On my 100th birthday, they did everything. They turned the city out. The sheriff, city council, all of them gave me good honors. From the mayor, city council, and all. They all were very, very good. Very good. I couldn't see. I got ribbons from all of them. And last year, I was the second oldest veteran in the Veterans Day Parade. I brought up the second car, and the oldest veteran was in the first car. He was in the first car. But this past year, he passed away. So right now, as far as I know, I'm the oldest veteran in Jacksonville because he passed away, since the parade. I was in the second car and he was in the first car in the parade. The mayor, sheriff, city council, all of them have been buried. And the representative too, Tony Hill, Senator Hill, oh man, he's been like a son to me. He takes me everywhere, like when he go out of town. I went to the funeral of, you remember when the 9 got killed in Charleston, and President Obama did the eulogy? Tony took me there. Tony had taken me to the Cape Canaveral, the launching of I've been to that, all that with Tony Hill. Tony Hill has been more like a son than anyone to me. Also Corrine Brown, and I was just like this. I knew her when she only had a agency, a travel agency. We became friends then, and we stayed friends throughout her political career and all. And Tony, I don't know what I'd do wasn't for him. He has introduced me to, what's the name of this pastor that he has a program? I have to look at it in the book. But I met him, met senators, all of those people.
As my last question, are there any other people from your past in Jacksonville that had a big impact on you that you would like to honor just by talking about their memory?
Henry Simmons, he was the past master of the Most Worshipful Union Grand Lodge. He was with me all the way. Anything happened to my family, Henry Simmons was there. He always was there. And now I got a friend, Jerry Russo, in the Masonic family. He's the one that had the exhibit, the Masonic exhibit at Stanton. At the Ritz. And they featured me in one section. That was all because of Jerry. Jerry has did a whole lot for me, for the Masonic family. The United Supreme Council, very good to me. Made me second in command of the Southern jurisdiction. Man, you can't beat that. Can't beat it. Can't beat it. And I thank all of those people who have been so kind to me. I don't know why, but they just saw something in me. I don't know, but I never have had a group where I was in a clique. I've always been silent. And I've always been friendly with the women in our organization. Evelyn Hayes, who a friend of mine, she has traveled with me all all over the country. So I appreciate her for that. And all the rest of you good people, I appreciate that.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Mr. Mitchell.
Well,
I
thank
appreciate
you.
it, sir.
Hopefully, in you,
Hopefully,
thank you.
For sure.
hopefully you
Thanks for
enjoyed
sharing.
this process. Hopefully you enjoyed sharing with
Oh
us. We
yeah,
appreciated it.
I enjoyed it very much.
Good.
I was supposed to go to Junior's this afternoon, but I told him no. I promise you.
Juniors?
Yeah, Junior's restaurant on Main Street.
I haven't been there.
You haven't been
No,
there?
what kind of food?
It's a seafood.
Ooh,
Seafood.
I like seafood.
Oh man.
Okay.
Well, on a Wednesday, get with me and I'll take you there.
Oh, you know what? I'm gonna take you up on that because I
Yes,
like.
sir.
You know.
Anytime.
Okay. Okay. I
And
always
all I
try
got
find
to
good
do is
places.
tell them who you are.